Okay, so table rocks. If your fingers are facing out to the side, it's going to make it slightly easier on the shoulder and the bicep. To make it a little more difficult, you would turn your fingers to face backward, as shown here. Really trying to squeeze your shoulder blades together as you lift your hips up into a table. So twist in bear, find yourself a solid 3-point contact position, then reach behind you, bicep by the ear and lift hips, then return back into bear and then over the other side. Finding this solid position initially by coming over and staying as low as you can, and then looking to, over time, keep hips higher as you rotate over. Once you get more confident with keeping hips high, twisting over, finding that stretch all the way around, you can start reaching towards the floor more and more, until eventually maybe you start to touch the floor. And then maybe go into a full bridge and rotating over the other side into a full bridge the other side. Shoulder extension, place your hands behind you, fingers facing back, squeezing your shoulder blades together and then pushing your hips away from you and then straightening the legs. To make it a little more difficult, you can try to pull your knees in towards you, as shown here, which is going to put then more load into the shoulder and the bicep. So seal rocks, placing your hands on the floor, squeezing your shoulder blades together and then lifting your head, looking up and trying to scoop the sternum of your chest up towards the ceiling while keeping your shoulders back and down. Try not to let the shoulders come forward, and then going into the rocks. Keeping the hands exactly where they are. As you bring yourself back down, you would start to squeeze your shoulder blades together, keeping the shoulders back and down in that bottom position, and then letting the shoulders really come up as you come into the top position. Thoracic rotation into a kneeling position with knees slightly apart, threading the hand between the leg and the other hand, and then reaching the other hand up over wherever feels comfortable. You can place your hand on the floor to assist yourself into more of a stretch there. Assisted thoracic extension, holding on to the stool bars. Place your forearms against the stool bars to allow yourself to drop the hips down and then open up the shoulders. Here, trying to squeeze the shoulder blades together, looking up, not holding tension in the glutes, and breathing into the stretch. trap stretch can be assisted using a box, lifting the knees towards the chest, taking the feet up over the head, and then you can assist yourself onto the box using the tops of your feet, trying to get the knees down towards the floor, or alternatively you can just bring yourself into an open space and look to try and get the feet to the floor, trying to go into as much flexion here as we can, maybe dropping the knees towards the floor to go into a deeper stretch. So a band assisted thoracic extension with the band, lifting the hands initially, taking the shoulders into full flexion, looking up and then trying to lift as much of your torso up off the floor as you can, allowing the band to pull you up as high as you can go. Again, not trying to hold any tension in the glutes here, so we don't feel a pinching in the lower back. Shoulder dislocates. Start with the hands nice and wide. The wider we go, the easier it is. The narrower we come in, the deeper the stretch. Making sure that the ribs stay down throughout the movement, not letting the chest come up. Keeping the arms as straight as we can. Trying to control the part of the rep that is the hardest, which is here. Trying to keep that as controlled as we can. An elevated cat stretch with pelvic tilts, taking the shoulders into full flexion, keeping all of the palm on the surface and taking the hips into posterior and anterior pelvic tilt, trying to keep as much shoulder flexion as we can. A supine cat stretch, taking yourself onto a box. I'm using here, can use also an exercise ball, which is just going to support the shoulders while the hands are held onto the stool bars and just allowing gravity to take the hips down towards the floor. The lower you take your hands, the more extension you put your spine in. Shoulder flexion reps, taking the shoulders into as much flexion as we can. This being shown from the floor as the easier level. We can take our feet onto an elevated surface to make this harder again. Really trying to open up the armpits as much as we can, pushing hard into the floor, trying to keep the hips as high as we can, keeping the shoulders or scapula in elevation. And for a more advanced position, you would take yourself up into a handstand, either on the wall or against these bars. Only toes in contact with the wall or the bars, and only hands in contact with the floor. Again, just taking these shoulders into as much flexion as we can. Pushing hard into the floor, keeping the shoulders also in elevation. And finally, the elevated bridge hold. Using a 30-inch box here, the higher we go, the more load is into the shoulders. Requires more strength, less flexibility, and this will allow you to condition them end range positions that we can't get from the floor. Keeping the shoulder blades retracted throughout this hold. And as you can see, the lower you take the feet, the more flexibility that it requires. Really trying to push our armpits, opening up them shoulders, trying to get the armpits in line or over the wrists.